Everybody. My name is Gabby Marabido, as you can see on the screen, and I'm the Community Development Coordinator at Zeitgeist. Thank you for joining us today for this conversation about slowly but surely the St. Louis County improvements to bike and ped infrastructure. And thank you to Carol with St. Louis County for hosting the event. This event is part of Zeitgeist's annual Bus Bike Walk Month. So I just want to do a quick shout out to our sponsors, EHR Go, likewise MPECU, CF Design, Essentia, St. Luke's, the DTA, Maurice's, Cirrus Aircraft, the Jamar Company, SHIP, Healthy Northland, and St. Louis County, who have helped make this event possible. We start all of our events with the acknowledgement that Zeitgeist and the Twin Ports are built on land that was originally Anishinaabe and home to the Anishinaabe and Dakota people, the original stewards of this territory. This land was ceded by the Anishinaabe in the 1842 and 1854 treaties, and historically and today it holds great significance for Indigenous people. We are committed to uplifting the name of these lands and community members from these nations who reside alongside us. This acknowledgement sets us up for today's presentation on the state of bike and pedestrian infrastructure and how we can continue to create a safe, sustainable, and accessible community through transportation initiatives. I'd encourage you to check out the full list of upcoming Bus Bike Walk activities on our webpage. And also a big shout out to our teams of volunteers, committee members, and all of our hosts who make these events possible. And I'll throw the Bus Bike Walk link in the chat. We've got some great events coming up, including 2 other virtual presentations that you all might find interesting. One tomorrow at 9 a.m. that is on transportation for all ages, making Duluth a more age-friendly community. And then on Thursday, there is becoming a better driver for people. So those are 2 to look forward to. That I would say register for if you're interested in this presentation as well. And then I will turn it over to you, Carol.
All right, thank you. I'm going to introduce myself more in just a minute, but since it's a relatively small group, I thought it'd be nice to keep it interactive. And George and now not Deb. Deb, already introduced yourselves. Okay. And James did, Gabby did. So if Dana and Kristen, do you guys mind saying a few words, whatever you want to say about yourselves? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think it'll be more fun if we pretend that we're all in the same room.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen. I live over in West Duluth, and I enjoy bike commuting and walking around the neighborhood here. So I was interested in hearing more about this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Dana. It's been a while.
I'm Dana. Yeah, I know. Hi, Carol. I love to bike. I have just a great passion for biking. And so I was like, well, I'm going to try to be involved in as many of these conversations and events that are going on this week. So just love biking. I went to Bentonville in April. That was just a thrill. I did 2 bike rides this weekend, one with the Spoken Gear, did a group thing. And I did another bike ride up the shore, so it was just 17 miles both days. It was amazing. I just love biking, so happy to share the passion for biking with all of you.
Thank you. That's great. What a great kickoff. All right, is the slides working now? Okay, got a thumbs up. So my main title is environmental engineer, and I wear a lot of different hats with County Public Works Department, and one of those is as bike pedestrian liaison. And then another one last fall, I suggested that we should have an intradepartmental sustainability and climate change work group, and they said, yeah, that's a great idea. Why don't you start that? And now I kind of get all sustainability and climate change questions directed me. So I came up with a new term, acting sustainability point of contact, thinking that maybe that's a role somebody else could do in the future. But anyway, what I put together for today is introductions to try to give you an idea of some of the who's who, at least that I know of, that I'm connected with for bike and pedestrian improvement in the Greater Twin Ports area. And then a section I called Attitude Adjustments and Balancing Act. And basically, really what I'm going to talk about there is the Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee that I chair and that we're active on, and how that group is the group, and then the member road jurisdictions, which is the city, the state, and the county that maintain our roads. I think have had a nice attitude adjustment in the last 10 plus years. And then I will spend most of the time talking about some specific county projects. Just in case nobody's looked at the boundary of St. Louis County lately, it goes from Duluth up to the border, by far the largest county in the state. We do have some cool things that have happened way up north, adding, wider, bikeable, walkable shoulders on a few of the roads, like I think it's Highway 23 up by Crane Lake. But I'm mainly going to focus today on county roads within the Metropolitan Interstate Council area, on Greater Duluth area on our side of the pond. And one thing that I didn't really think about this till I started working with the county 7 years ago, is that within this area, some roads are city, and on this map, those are mostly the gray roads. Some are overseen by the Department of Transportation, and those are largely shown in black. So things like Highway 2, Highway 35, and Central Entrance. And then in pink, and I think another color here, mostly pink and gray, are county roads. I always think of it kind of like a loose bunch of spaghetti on a plate with, I don't know. So here and there, and I just named a few of the most commonly known roads and used roads. Beck's Road, Uggstead, oops, I got a typo there. Midway out west, Stebner, Getchell, Highland, 57th Avenue West, that whole system that comes down the hill, that's county. Similarly, Haynes Road turns into 40th Avenue West, and that's county until Grand Avenue. Morris Thomas Road, Piedmont, and then going north, Arlington, Rice Lake Road, Arrowhead, Howard Gneissen, and then moving sort of easterly, you got 4th Street East from 6th Avenue East, Woodland and Wallace, Calvary, Arnold, Snively, Jean Duluth, and then you get way up to Lester River Road, where I think there's a lot of roads up there, county roads that people like to bike on. Just a little bit about me. I'm originally from St. Paul, so spent quite a bit of my time in St. Paul, Minneapolis. And so transplant 20 years ago to Duluth. I have been lucky enough to spend time in biking in the Netherlands, Copenhagen, and the lower pictures, Växjö, Sweden. So I've been to the promised land and enjoyed that, and seen how awesome it can be, and not just the safety, but also the participation rate of the number of people who get from point A to point B by bike when they feel they can do it safely. So that's that's sort of the vision. That's what we're trying to get to here. The first 7 years in Duluth, I bike commuted from near Chester Creek Cafe to downtown Duluth, and about 7 years to Canal Park. And then I took the job with Public Works up in Pike Lake. So now I go up Woodland, and the picture on the left is the new bike lanes in Upper Woodland. Then I get 8 miles without a turn on Martin Road. I did not realize before that turning makes biking interesting. I'm used to it now, but I did get a bike that has allowed me to bike more often, given the 15 miles each way, an electric bike that I've been lately confessing when I pass people, sorry, I'm cheating, and then I speed along, but it's definitely made it more bikeable on a regular basis. So I just wanted to mention a few of my coworkers that I work with really closely. Jim Foldesy, the county engineer, lives in West Duluth, and lifetime West Duluthian, has been really great about sort of helping me push things. Sometimes I recommend things and kind of get I don't have time for that, I don't know about that. And he will sometimes tell the engineers, go back to the board, try harder. Get Carol involved earlier, get the bike community involved earlier. So that's been great. Appreciate his support. Then the resident engineers, and our traffic engineer, Vic Lund, are really critical, as our maintenance staff. And I will say that if anybody has complaints and questions, you can send them to me. I can forward them to these people. You're also more than welcome to send compliments if you like the way a road has been rebuilt, especially from a bike pedestrian standpoint. And I'm not completely joking about that, in that I think, you know, they're all human, and it helps for them to get that positive reinforcement for, you know, people saying, I am using this new sidewalk, I am using the new facility, do more, that can only help. So another hat I wear is as chair of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, known as BPAC. That's one of the committees that reports to the Metropolitan Interstate Commission for this area. James, that's on the call until recently, now James is with the city, but he was the staff transportation planner I worked closely with at the BPAC. Now I work with Prescott. But so this is just a list of who is on that group, and includes the Duluth Transit Authority, as well as citizen reps and some advocacy groups like We Walk Duluth has been really active as well. We meet quarterly, but we have a new plan I'll mention in just a minute. And the mission of this group is to identify bike and pedestrian issues and needs in the transportation system, provide feedback and technical advice on related policies, programs, and projects and plans. And that includes engaging citizens of all ages and abilities in that. So if anybody on the call is interested in getting on an email list for updates, might be interested in being a member of the committee, things like that, please try to get your email to me, either through the chat, or I'll list mine again in a little bit. And our priorities for this year is to provide useful input on some specific projects. And that's something that we're doing more and more, that I think the road authorities, including first the county, did this for a few projects where we brought, you know, we went to this committee and did a presentation, said, hey, we're going to redo Upper Woodland. What's your input? And then incorporated that. And so I think that whole system is sort of getting, I don't know, normalized, put in place as just what we're doing more and more. Consistent application of best practices. The main thing we're trying to do there is hold a second workshop for local planners and especially the engineers that are designing these things, so they have a good idea of what's possible. It's hard sometimes to envision something until you've seen it, and there's plenty of other places where there are bike and pedestrian facilities that are more state of the art, that there's no reason that we can't, where applicable and feasible, emulate those. And then I'll have a slide on this in a minute, but there's a regional bike plan and a pedestrian plan. And I think that Gabby was going to put links to these, or if you could now in the chat. I can't see the chat at the same time. You might find those of interest. And if you get a chance to look at those and have comments or questions, you can email those to the addresses at the bottom, or get a hold of anybody on this group. But if you actually might be interested in participating on a subcommittees that haven't met once yet, so you'd be there at the first meeting that we just formed to work on implementing these relatively new plans to try to drive it forward sooner than later. We're looking for people to help with that. And there's just some pictures of the related plans, and the new James, known as who is Prescott Morrill, is the new transportation planner. And this is just an example of the Federal Highways Administration. There's all sorts of resources out there, but this is one that I know our traffic engineer really likes, and studies and participates in some of their programs. So this is probably actually a lot what one of the things I'm going to talk about in a minute is a couple of new crossings we're adding on Woodland Avenue would look like this. Sort of, and then the general approach to projects, and I'd say this is both with the county and what is, in the plans and that the BPAC does is, we get input from people, but also looking at crash data, use data, especially, and then what's in the plans that actually have maps that show what the priority routes are for biking and pedestrians, often based on, is there a church there? Is there a school there? What's the traffic patterns? And then there's the juggling and balancing, is there the rub between parking and bike lanes? Do you have to work out number of lanes for through traffic versus bike lanes? This is a huge one, room to have a boulevard between a sidewalk and a street, and how you're going to maintain it. So there's a lot of balancing and sort of juggling of priorities that goes into it. James wanted to make sure I mentioned that one of the things that the bike and pedestrian plans really focused on that we're trying to carry forward is this concept that providing facilities that can be used on their own by anybody from a typical 8-year-old to a typical 80-year-old. Not just this graphic is based on when people were asked, would you do you bike, and when you bike to get from place to place, not just for fun, but to actually get to the grocery store, to school, are you comfortable? Would you ever do it? And 7%, 5 to 7% are kind of what end up being called strong and fearless, and they're in the road and they're fine. Maybe another 5%, so maybe 10% total that are pretty confident. But over 50% are interested in biking, but concerned about their safety. And for that reason, that holds them back from participating, from doing that. And that's a huge group of people that are otherwise largely taking cars, and taking the bus is great, but biking and walking, as you enthusiasts know, is as active transportation, also has the health benefits. So I think I'm going to pause there to see if there's questions or comments, because the rest of my slides get into specific projects. So any questions or anything? Keep going. All right, I'll keep going. So for St. Louis County, some of our projects, not all, you can find information on our website. And to find it, you go to Public Works. I think it's pretty logical after you get to Public Works under construction. And then there are live links, and there are 3 local ones. The Woodland Avenue, Snively Road, West Arrowhead Road reconstruction, that's what, these are all, actually that's a 2022 project. Morris Thomas Road, I'm going to go over, that's a 2023, and Glenwood Road Snively Roundabout is this summer, 2022, starting very soon. So 2 slides that show the location of some projects and then more specific pictures. And I don't know that this has got everything, but it's the ones that jumped out at me. So things that there's 2 on here that were improved after the 2012 flood. So in that 2013-14 times area, that included Haynes Road, where it goes above the railroad tracks. Basically all the way up to Morris Thomas Road has a sidewalk and bikeable shoulders. They're not marked bike lanes, but they're bikeable shoulders. I think it works pretty well. Highland, I think, was improved, but upcoming exciting ones, I'm going to show Morris Thomas and Piedmont, new sidewalks and crossings. This is a big one, especially maybe George, you guys might be interested in this, participating. 40th Avenue West between the railroad tracks and Grand Avenue is due for complete reconstruction, including utilities. So the city works with and the county work together on those type of projects. And I think that's 2025-ish that's coming up. And so this is the time when, especially since it's a full reconstruct, some of the concepts that we've proposed we being the Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee are a really wide bikeable sidewalk on probably one side that then connects to the option of the sidewalk and the bikeable shoulder above the railroad tracks, but that's not set in stone yet. So that's a one that we're actively, we need to actually have another meeting on site, and people, anybody interested is welcome to join us for that. I put Haynes in parentheses because between Morris Thomas and Air Park Road in a couple years, I think that's 2023, that's just a mill and overlay project, but when we restripe it, it's currently basically 2 12-foot wide driving lanes and 2 12-foot wide parking lanes. And the proposal that was just out there for comment is to change to 3 lanes. So it actually is going, in this case, from 2 lanes to 3 lanes to add a center turn lane, which would add safety for people turning into their driveways and side roads. You'd still end up with, I think it's a 8-foot, 7 or 8 foot bikeable shoulder. 8 foot on that. So that's on the west end side of things. Going to the northeast, Rice Lake Road from basically just below Marshall School, and now it's been continued all the way up to Duluth Edison School north of Arrowhead. We added 8-foot asphalt paved combined sidewalk bike facility there. Arlington added a little sidewalk from central entrance up to the community center with a crossing. Upper Woodland, like I said, that's what I use to bike to work. That was reconstructed with actual marked bike lanes, not just bikeable shoulders. New sidewalk on Calvary. 4th Street, I have a picture of that, is, was got the bike lanes. They are narrow. Spelling on Wallace, but that was, I think the best parts about 4th Street are some of the improved pedestrian bump outs and sidewalks and lighting. And then at Wallace, actually quite a while ago, before I started, the county insisted on adding sidewalk on the upper end of Wallace. Upcoming projects, though, Woodland, Anoka to Arrowhead. I have pictures on slides on that. Snively pedestrian crossing at the top of Lakeview. Glenwood Roundabout will have pedestrian bike specific crossings. And then Howard Ganeson Road, if anybody has special interest in that, I'd also like to start a list of interested persons. That is a tricky one. It really needs some sort of improvement. It's very narrow, highly used. So what we're looking at there is the county engineer did tell me to try to apply for a planning grant to start the process of deciding even what to do with Arrowhead, Howard Ganeson Road. So a few specifics. This is on Arlington, and this is the crossing here with the combination of paint on the road, the rapid flashing beacons on the right, and the signs. That's sort of become the county's standard improved crossing. And I was so excited one day, as you can tell here, I was in my car when I took this picture, but I was really excited to see this use by the whole, I assume, daycare. This is the side path on Rice Lake Road looking down at Pecan Avenue. And I don't know, Dana, if you're a mountain biker, or Kristen, or any of you, but the discussion here is the idea of adding a pedestrian refuge, even more enhanced crossing, because the Duluth Traverse crosses the road here, and it's a 45-mile-an-hour road here. So trying to add some safety to that. And I will say, there's a lot of discussion between side paths, which qualifies as separated bike facility because they have the vertical separation at the curb. A lot more comfortable for a lot of users. Great in most cases. They can be, to me, tricky, and you have to be thoughtful about where using them. And like this could be on 40th Avenue, how to set it up so that if there's a lot of driveways and side streets, that you don't have conflict points there, especially with drivers who tend to only look left for cars and not to the right. So if you have a bike speeding or somebody running from the right, that can be dangerous. I'm not saying it shouldn't happen, but it's just something that trying to pick the right facility has to take those in mind. But it works well on Rice Lake Road. I use that a lot. Morris Thomas Road will continue to have wide bikeable shoulders, but the improvement on that is on the north side. It's getting or the south side. Yeah, south side getting a sidewalk. There's no sidewalks there right now. So for that 1 mile stretch from Piedmont up to Haynes, you get all new sidewalk. And then one of those enhanced crossing at Chambersburg Avenue East. And if you've ever driven this road or experienced it in any way, there is a sharp point there, but we're actually going to lower the road enough to try to make sure there's enough, well, to ensure there's enough sight distance. And then Piedmont Avenue, there's actually mill and overlay project there where we're adding sidewalk where it's missing by Big Daddy's restaurant and a safe crossing at Nanacoke near the school. And a lot of this we do because it's in the safe routes to school plan. So if you've ever had the opportunity to be involved with the safe routes to school planning process, I think it's, you know, it pays off where eventually, and this is what we need to make sure is that the road authorities with these responsibilities pay attention to those plans. But I went to the public meeting the other night. James was there too for Morris Thomas. And there's a lot of people there and nobody said, I don't want a sidewalk. They all, you know, said, yeah, I guess this makes sense. Kids got to get to school. And just to be able to say this has been assessed. And if we want kids to be able to bike and walk to school, these are the improvements we need to make. It seems to really help to push that. And this is, I don't know if this makes sense to everybody, but if you're looking through the roadway, on the top is the existing Morris Thomas Road with 12-foot drive lanes and 10-foot shoulders that can be used for parking. The new design will have a 2-foot gap in the middle with a double line, but then 11-foot lanes, and then the white line outside of that, parking, and a 5-foot sidewalk on one side. And feel free to interrupt me if you have questions or comments. And keep it casual. Okay, I have a bunch of pictures on Woodland Avenue. As James probably recognizes these, I took them from last Thursday. There was a public meeting as shown here. So this project extends from Anoka. If you can picture where it used to be the Piggly Wiggly up in Anoka on Woodland, you go down from that, there's Freiburger Arena, and that's about where Anoka Avenue is. So this is below that. The pavement is in really bad shape. So that's the main thing with this project. And I would have to say, when I first started, I kind of would hear, well, this is just a pavement project. It's just a pavement project. We're not going to do anything. Now it's kind of become a joke. There's no such thing as just a pavement project. Everything is pavement plus, which is good to say, while we're at it, what can we do for making improvements? The biggest thing there, so this picture shows the already rebuilt part from Anoka up to Calvary, whereas you can see there's just one drive lane in each direction, a center turn lane in the middle, and bike lanes on the outside. In this case, these are 6-foot bike lanes, and then the nice new sidewalks. Don't know if this is Anoka. That might be farther down in the picture. Yeah, it's farther down, but there is at least one pedestrian crossing with the flashing lights there. And one thing with this that I guess helps make it pretty easy to sell it is for people who live on the road, it's traffic calming and they can get turned in and out of their driveway much safer. But also this conversion is a proven benefit to vehicle drivers as well as cyclists by providing a designated place for the cyclists to the side. So the curbs, that one thing with a pavement rehab project, we usually leave the width of the road from curb to curb as it is. So it's a math problem to reallocate how that's used. So this slide shows that concept. And in this area, for this project, it would actually be a 7-foot wide bike lane all along there. So this would be most of the road with the center turn lane. A new sidewalk from, in this picture, if you were walking up from Hartley Nature Center entrance to Woodland, there's no sidewalk now on the edge. Hartley and the city just added the sidewalk down the road. So we're going to continue that on that same side of the road. So instead of having to cross over, there'll be a sidewalk on both sides. That being said, we are adding, it doesn't show here, right in this exact spot, we are also adding a safe crossing with a pedestrian refuge in the median. So you only have to cross one lane of traffic at a time, and that'll be paired with bus stops, pullouts. A small section of sidewalk also is getting replaced to go from a 4-foot to a 5-foot near a church just above Fairmont as you start to go up the hill. As I mentioned, there will be in just the sections really near Hartley Park, a raised median, which also, because you don't need the left turn lane there, so to help calm traffic. One of the things we heard at the public meeting, several people who called in, their main comment was, can you plant trees in the median or do otherwise use it for green infrastructure by planting it instead of having concrete? So that's something that can discuss more here. The maintenance is always the rub with that. But the median provides for a pedestrian refuge. And then on the far right side of the picture, we added one at Minneapolis Avenue because of the bus stop there, and it's tricky with the curve to cross the road there. So that's, I'm sure won't be used as much as the crossing up at Hartley, but that whole neighborhood to get to the DTA bus stop, that's really where they're gonna have to cross. So trying to facilitate, again, that idea of, you don't have to walk all the way to the destination, but walk, get on the bus, walk when you get there, put your bike on the bus, whatever. And this one, Steve, the engineer, worked really closely with Chris Belden and others at the DTA to try to make sure this is all matched with their future long-term plans. I guess, yeah, well, here's the picture at the entrance of the idea of if you're crossing it, you can see the pedestrian crossing where you can pause in the middle, and there's a cut through the median, so it's ADA accessible. There's no need to go up and down the curb. I know a lot of people find the bike lanes on 4th Street to be marginal, and I use them a fair amount, and what they do for me is they reduce the number of people who yell, "Get on the sidewalk." Somebody else had that happen on any street. That's my least of all the harassment. I guess they're not hitting me, but getting yelled to get on the sidewalk just makes me mad. I have the right to be on the road. I'm following the rules of the road. So it does make it shows bikes can be there. I tend to ride on the white line on the left so I don't get hit by a car door. And as we know, in winter, snow fills half the parking area and it becomes a problem. So I think it was an improvement, but like I said, the nice lighting and the nice sidewalks, that worked well. Woodland Avenue on the right, that's the 6-foot bike lane shown there. Doesn't have the issue with the parking next to it, so it works much better. Okay, any questions on Woodland? So I'm changing to Proctor. And this, I just have the one slide on this, but on the left is the quick trip that's off Highway 2 if you happen to be going up 35 and you're driving and you go up Highway 2 like you're going to Proctor. Boundary Avenue then is at the Blackwoods. You turn to the right, there's no sidewalk on this road. And there's a combination of parks. There's a park to the right here, schools. I think this was called for, probably James has called out as a, what do you call it, a gap in the pedestrian plan. So here the adding a sidewalk in at least, I guess, the one protected crosswalk. So that's a project in that area. And that's what I have for slides for our county projects. Trying to actually look at my list. It used to be 1 or 2 a year that I get asked for input on, and now there's so many I can actually hardly keep up. One other thing I'll mention is that we had an interesting debate, and I was so excited that somebody thought to ask, and that was when we're chip sealing roads where we put down the pretty, fair sized chips, small grit, whether or not to do that on bikeable shoulders, and we all agreed no, that is bad news. It slows you down biking, and if you fall, that's bad. And it doesn't get the wear and tear that the main road does. So hopefully that gets out to everybody. It was the county engineer said, yes, don't chip seal shoulders. I can't remember, James, if I passed that on to the city or not. So
no, I hadn't heard that, Carol.
Okay.
So
Can you pass
appreciate
that
hearing
along?
that news. Yeah. Will do.
It'd be nice to be consistent on that. I know Steinley got chip sealed, but and there's no rules that are always 100%, but that's the basic idea. But again, it was just exciting that somebody thought to ask, how is this for the non-vehicle users? I think it had to do with Martin Road, and that's a pretty high use rate, not only for bikes and pedestrians, but people training for cross-country skiing with those skis with the wheels underneath, and you really need it smooth for that. So I just have the last 2 slides. I was going to make time in case James, if we have questions, or if other people like James wants to say anything about some of your projects with the city. I happen to have these pictures. Last year I was biking to pick my car up from some repairs at Bulldog Collision up in Hermantown, and I didn't even know this new trail was open. I was on Anderson Road, and I had just had a very frustrating experience crossing Trinity Road. But then I came across a new trail in the woods, and it's just beautiful. So that made my day to get to cut through on that. And the idea is we'll eventually connect down to the Munger Trail.
Carol, I see we have a question in the chat from Kristen. Just a general question. Have some of these improvements been in place long enough to see a difference in bike or ped traffic? Is that something that you're monitoring?
James, can you answer that?
Yeah. I can say I can answer the question, are we monitoring? Yeah, we're doing annually bike and pedestrian counts. We do them in September. But we also have as a region, we have a number of portable bike and ped counter devices that automatically counts, and 2 permanent ones, one on the lake walk between Fitkers and Leif Erikson Park, and then another permanent counter, bike counter in this case, on the North Shore Scenic Drive just near Brighton Beach. So there is monitoring going on since about 2012. I think 2012 is when we really started doing bike and pedestrian counts. But the first part of the question was, are we seeing an increase? And that's hard. Our numbers how we've counted isn't necessarily showing us an increase, but I'm not saying that there isn't one. It's just we only have a limited amount of resources to collect data, so we're really trying to capture where we don't have bike and ped data, and even more when there's a road project coming up, getting what that data is so that we can kind of do a before and after measurement. Here I can give you a good example. We've counted 4th Street, a county road that was fully reconstructed, and we counted it before and we've counted it after, and the numbers, it's kind of inconclusive if there was an increase in it in bicycling on that street. But what we really saw was actually there was a major reduction in sidewalk riding, which is dangerous for cyclists to be on the sidewalk because motorists aren't looking for cyclists on the sidewalk, and so at the intersections, there's just a lot of danger there. So that facility that Carol showed a picture of did reduce cyclists on that sidewalk and increase the number that were on the street. So that's what like I said, we're not sure if the numbers are going up. I mean, we hear from the bike shops that they're having an increase in sales, that their sales have gone up of bicycles. So you would kind of surmise that that would mean there would be more people out there cycling as well. So, but we are counting, like I said, and always working to try to pursue more automated count so that we can collect more robust data. So long answer, sorry about that, but great question.
In the last slide, I just stopped showing, but one thing that I think we, and when I'm saying we and the Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee, James and I, is that maintenance is a problem. Use of sidewalks for garbage cans, and I'm not sure if there's days, that was the picture I just showed. There's days where if it's garbage day, the sidewalk really becomes unusable, and can be a really big problem. The only time I ever tried biking the sidewalk on Arrowhead Road to get from Rice Lake up to the highway, it was horrible. I had to stop every time I came to a garbage can because there's definitely no road and it's narrow sidewalk. So, you know, biking, walking, whatever you're using it for. And then snow. They're, I don't want to say intractable problems, but they're tricky. They're things that we've talked about, sort of having, you know, a maintenance summit and thinking about, are there changes to design? Like if you have a boulevard, you have storage, more storage for snow, but then you have a different approach for clearing the snow. So trying to be more intentional about thinking about how these facilities are maintained in a usable fashion.
Oh,
Yeah.
Carol, I just
Go ahead.
add in that
No, that's okay.
because it made me think, Carol, you just mentioned garbage cans and snow, that our infrastructure isn't necessarily reliably available all year. You know, our roads for the most part are reliably available. We have a few times, you know, in the winter where, you know, the plows aren't able to get to them, or not all of them, and it takes a few days. But that's really, those are rare instances. It doesn't happen that often. The main roads, even in our biggest storms, stay open. But our walking and bicycling infrastructure is not the case. In the winter, it's not reliably available to be cleared of snow, except for the Lake Walk. That's the only facility in the Cross State Trail that those attached are that the Parks Department, the city's Parks Department, clears. And that's reliably available because the Parks Department is out there clearing it, which is why sometimes you'll hear the comments, well, the streets aren't cleared, and why is the Lake Walk cleared? Well, there's two different departments, which means it's two different priorities. So that's how your residential street may not be cleared, but the Lake Walk is clear. But that plays a role into that question, the previous question about, are we seeing a difference? And if we don't have our infrastructure reliably available, then people don't rely on it and don't use it. And that, I think, is the biggest reason we are not seeing an increase, in a really dramatic increase in especially bicycling, and especially walking for sure as well. That if you can't rely on it, then you find other ways to get around. And I say that because there is a city in Finland that it's similar in size as Duluth, a similar amount of snow, but they have massive amount of cycling in the wintertime. Oh, and also similar, it's not a dense urban European city. It's more of a city that's more like the United States. Parking lots for supermarkets and more spread out. But they reliably plow they have a network of bike and pedestrian ways, and they reliably plow them and clear them all winter and keep everything open and available. And they have huge numbers of users because of that. And that is really the determining factor. And they have a network too, a complete network. Right now we have a hodgepodge of trails and things that start and stop and not all connected. And so we're getting there, as this whole presentation is about, but it isn't. The weather, the temperatures, those are factors, but those aren't the determining factors to really getting that what Carol had shown, that 50% of people who would try this and do this, it's reliability. If it's reliable, then people will do it. If it's not, then they will find what is reliable. So sorry to steal your or take over your presentation, Carol, but I wanted to make that point because I think that's really important. Because a lot of people say, oh, it's cold and snowy here, but that's actually not the determining factor in people's decision making when you give people real, reliable, legitimate options. So
Thanks.
Turn it back to you, Carol.
That's okay, George.
Yeah, I was wondering if you've looked into the stop as yield for bicyclists. The concept of a stop sign for bicyclists being yield because we can see a lot better than a car can, for example, and safety issues that go along with that. I don't know if there's been any discussion of that in either city or the county.
That has not come up the county, and since I've been attending Bike Advisory Board for like 10 years, because I did just as an interested citizen before. I'm thinking, do you know if, I don't know if you guys are involved at all with Bike MN that gets a lot involved with various bike related statutes and rules, and that makes me curious if what their position is on it. But stop sign as yield, you know, is it used in other places?
Yeah, it's started in Idaho. It's usually known as an Idaho stop, and it's been adopted in several other states. It would be a matter of state law, I believe, to change it. So you're probably the wrong people to ask. But one thing I've noticed is like multi-use trails often have little stop signs at every intersection and sometimes even at driveways. And this is not a good thing.
Agree. That's yeah. You're right. It's great bringing it up. This is that's an awesome thing to bring up with us. Those of us who are professionals working in this field to hear these questions and think about them. Bike MN is the advocacy organization in the state of Minnesota that really does push state law to reflect things like this. And I know this is on their radar. I'm not sure where it is as a priority for Bike MN. But I know they've been, chipping away each year at some of these. For example, I know they helped make a change for where a cyclist can stop at a traffic signal for a reasonable amount of time, I think is the language, but then they can proceed through a red light if it doesn't change, because some traffic signals won't change, won't pick up a cyclist at it, won't change. So that those are rules that have gotten changed. I know that, but yeah, that Idaho stop one, that's a big one. And even though I'm a city official, those little stop signs on the trails, those are the most annoying things I think ever. And they don't help anything. Those are really annoying. And I think that is also a state law is why those stop signs are put in. But I still think there's I think there's lack of imagination when we put those in, because on side paths you don't have to put the stop signs in. So it's interesting we put them in on our trails when we don't have to put them in on our side paths. Anyway, Carol, what were you gonna say?
So Saturday I was biking on the Munger Trail, and I was so excited about the tabled crossing at the new road entrance to Kayak. Is that Kayak Bay? And that treatment is what we were talking about requesting, like assuming that along 40th Avenue that they're probably on the uphill side is a bikeable side path like that. The idea of actually having to go gradually up so that instead of, so that the people on the bike stay at that level. But the biggest thing is the awareness for the cross vehicles. And James has been harping on those and asking for that. Thanks, Kristen. Is anybody interested in signing up for BPAC updates or other information? Just put your email in the chat or drop me a message. Share the links in email. Oh, okay. Thanks, Gabby.
And I will say, so this meeting is being recorded as well. And so everybody that registered and wasn't able to be here will be sent this recording, and I can also send the recording to those of you that were here as well to review anything, so you can look at the slideshows again, have access to this Q&A as well, which isn't as documented, obviously. So
Super. Hi, George, I see yours. So LEFOU 23. I hope I put this where I don't lose it. And it's great to have, I try to be very conscious with the bike board and the projects, that there's appropriate, that there's not being focused on one part of town to the exclusion of the other and things like that. And that we have voices from different parts of town, different users and things like that. So that would be great. Okay, thanks, Kristen. That's super.
Carol?
Well, I appreciate you guys calling, joining us.
And Carol, maybe one thing that's already been brought up, I'm also interested in just from the folks here today of areas that they, an area that they travel through and they would like to see focus or attention put onto for either walking or cycling. I'm always interested in hearing those things, because sometimes there are things that like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that, or an area I had never considered. So yeah, I don't know if you have some spots that you'd like to see improved for walking or bicycling, or just like, why is it like that, or anything like that. I'm always fascinated to hear those.
I'll just say I feel like I'm a little spoiled on the west side of town, because I think our biking infrastructure is pretty good, especially given where I need to go. But part of why I was kind of interested in attending this talk tonight and everything, I've been hearing a little bit more about the project that's happening on Raleigh Street, which is right near where I live. And I think that'll be an awesome way to get to a lot of the existing bike infrastructure in this neighborhood, way to get to the grocery store. Like, that's just going to connect to a whole lot of great areas. So I'm really excited about that. And I know it's already on your radar.
It's full reconstruction next year, and public meetings will begin, I think, in June. And so I'm putting I see your email, so I'm going to write it down to make sure you get it on a list to track it. And there's some really big questions about, we have opportunities with that. So that's exciting project. So.
I'll just put a little plug out. So us at Zeitgeist, one of the roads that we are doing a lot of like visioning around and trying to get community feedback on is 6th Ave East, which is due for reconstruction in about, I think, as James, you said, 7-ish years. And that one is like obviously a major road that cuts through a very residential area, cuts off the Myers-Wilkins Elementary School, makes it really hard for kids to get to school. So we're trying to get a lot of community feedback, envisioning around what they'd like to see in that hillside neighborhood, what they'd like to see for that road redesign, rather than just redoing it over the same blueprint, really making it more accessible to walkers and bikers. So we have our mayor's bike ride and walk on the 27th, which will feature a bike ride from City Hall to the One Roof. They're making an apartment complex right on the corner of 4th Street and 6th Ave. So it's going to be a major development with lots of families in that area. That will be open in a few years, I believe. And then once we get to the site, we'll be doing like walking stations, having talks from the mayors and everything. So we'd love to have you all there. And it's kind of a great opportunity to get in really early on a project before things are necessarily set in stone, and be able to share with the city and council members and the mayors and what the community really wants to see. So I'd love to invite you all to that. I'll actually put in the link for that so you guys can check out more about that event, but we'd love to have you there.
Gabby, thanks for bringing that up. The 6th Avenue East. We had a meeting. Was that had to be last week because it's only
Yep,
Monday.
that was last week. I wasn't
last-
able to be at that one. I was at
Yeah.
another presentation, but
And it was a lot of city staff attended that, and just talking about 6th Avenue East and, largely between, really 2nd Street and 9th Street and what can be done with that. As that's getting, as Gabby mentioned, in about 7 years or so, it's getting set for full reconstruction. Maybe sooner because that pavement, that concrete's not holding very well. But I mean, the ideas in that just 1 hour lunch meeting that was held last week were like, do we even need 6th Avenue East? It's a relic of when 2nd and 3rd Street were the main MnDOT highway through the city before I-35, and 6th Avenue East connected up to, as the state highway, up to Central Entrance, and so do we, so as crazy as that, like, do we even need that 4-lane road? It was before 2nd and 3rd were state highways. It was a residential street as much as anything. I mean, we're talking a long time ago, but to like, what does it serve? How can we make it work? Can we open up the Brewery Creek that runs underneath it? And like all sorts of ideas are flying out there right now, and it's early, so it's really a great time to be thinking about things and figuring out what the city needs, what do the residents need out of that road, out of that corridor, and all of that. So just, that's exciting. Gabby, so thanks for bringing that up.
I guess if you want to put Central Avenue on your radar, I'm sure it doesn't need development at the moment, but to go from 8th Street all the way down to Raleigh would be a nice connector.
Thanks for mentioning that. Central Ave is one of my favorite. It's like a underappreciated street. It's a really neat street, and it's got so much on it, including the elementary school, and so I wish that was due for reconstruction in the next few years, so we could really do an awesome project. But I think it was reconstructed. I moved here in 2004, and I think it was major work was done at around that. So, but that doesn't mean things can't be done to it. So I'd love to get bike lanes on it, even like bike lanes like 4th Street, just to get them on there. So anyway, thanks for bringing that up.
Well, should we wrap up? So it's not too long. Go ahead, Deb.
My big concern right now, and it's been a concern since I got the bike, is the connection for bikes between the west end of town and downtown. Because basically I've got 3 choices. I can take the long way around over the scary pedestrian bridge and end up stuck down at the bottom of the hill. Take the viaduct over, which is pretty fast moving cars, even though that is supposedly a city street and it feels very tight. Or I can detour up to 1st Street or 3rd Street and come down a steep hill into a very busy street at Mesabi Avenue. So I'm hoping that something could be done maybe to slow traffic moving along that, direct route along Superior Street so that we could bike it back and forth, because that's a really powerful connector there for bicyclists. And we're increasing the number of people living in the West End, which is great. West Duluth could be a great neighborhood to develop for people who want to walk and bike, but it's tough to get to the downtown from here if you're on a bike and are not brave.
I don't know, James, if you have history related to, MnDOT reconstructed a law that fairly recently, and that was one of those things that didn't know was coming. It is kind of relates to BPAC trying to get road authorities to tell us ahead of time what's coming up, what's going on. I've never tried to go that way. I've seen people walking. I always take what you call the scary pedestrian or 3rd, like I know what you mean. So that is a problem. So do you think the old pedestrian bridge the bridge itself is scary to use? I'm curious.
Well, it's scary for me because I'm afraid of heights. I think it is, just by design, these bridges are scary. All you've got is a chain link fence between you and a 60-foot drop onto pavement. So, and it's narrow. It's really quite narrow. It feels very uncomfortable if you're going to meet another bike coming the other way, especially a cargo bike, which I'm seeing more and more of, or a pedestrian.
And I used to commute to Canal Park from West Duluth, so I'd have to take that in those 90-degree turns to get on the bridge and then 90-degree again to get on that ramp. Those are a bit tricky. You have to slow down to make the turn, but you go too slow and you lose balance. So it's just a difficult bridge to navigate on a bike. If they're going to and I know that bridge itself is kind of old, so if they were going to redo it, maybe they could slant it instead of making it 90 degrees or something along those lines. But
thanks for bringing it up. I was just going to say, MnDOT, I actually ran into some MnDOT folks last summer who were looking at that pedestrian bridge and saying, do we really need that? Is there a better option here? Because as MnDOT looks at improving, that bridge is old. It was built when there was railroad tracks there, so it was built before the interstate. And so that, and the factories that used to be along the waterfront aren't there, only a few, and people aren't walking from the Observation Hill neighborhood to go to work. So its primary original function doesn't exist anymore. And so MnDOT has asked me just what were my initial thoughts. I'm actually really glad you brought this up, because I was like, well, maybe we need to make a better connection into the downtown, which is where a lot of people are trying to get, and then they have to kind of go around, the interstate, go over it and then go under it to get into the downtown. And so that is a great thought of like, and unfortunately work was just done by MnDOT there, but a lot of the work they did was to extend life of existing structures. And so it's not, we don't have so with a new, road or bridge, it's a 50-year life, or a bridge, it can be a 75-year life. But when they do these extensions of projects, there's a lot of opportunity to continue to look at it and try to make improvements. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's one area that really we should, Carol, I'm thinking that's something that we should bring up with our Bike Ped Advisory Committee as a study area. It's such a barrier. Masaba, all of that, I-35, Masaba area. And so appreciate that being brought up. One area that I've been thinking for trying to figure out is just how to connect Denfeld, West Duluth, to the Cross City Trail better. Now that the Cross City Trail is built, and when the PCA is done with their work underneath the Bong Bridge, it will reopen hopefully this fall. We've got a really great link, and next year we're almost going to have it fully connected to the Munger. We're going to get so close to having it almost fully connected. A 20-year vision finally starting, 25-year probably vision finally getting realized, but it has got me thinking, like, how do we better connect Wade Stadium area to Denfeld and to the Cross City Trail? But I'm glad you brought up, because that's where my mind has been. So I really appreciate that you brought up this other area, that connection between West End and downtown, so that we don't lose track of that either. So.
And you're not the only one who finds the bridge uncomfortable. I helped somebody walk across it when he froze up crossing over it from anxiety. It was during a bike bus walk event, group bike ride. Just not comfortable for a lot of users.
Carol, thanks for sharing that as well. The only time I experienced somebody uncomfortable was we had a group ride with kids, and a 7-year-old froze up and just could not cross on a bike, and that was eye-opening to me. I hadn't thought about that, so I appreciate hearing these stories of adults also having concerns with this. This isn't just when we say, oh, kids are afraid of it, that can get dismissed, but when you hear like people are afraid of this bridge, that's regardless of age or ability, that's a really powerful. So.
Yeah, I agree with Kristen. But the idea of having a bridge, it gets back to what James says all the time, is we provide multiple ways to get places for cars. You need options. Some people are going to Canal Park, some people are doing this, some people are doing that. It kind of gets back to the idea with the 8 to 80. It doesn't mean that the confident people can't, maybe there is a really good high-speed route to get from here to there, that's great, but it's not one size fits all. Is that how you say it? Options, yeah. All right. I gotta give time to, okay, the new bike does have a headlight, but I should get biking.
Thank you so much, Carol, for doing this and everybody for attending. This has been great, and I really hope to see you all at some other Bus Bike Walk Month events. And if not, then that's great too. And I'll just keep posting on social media. Follow us there. We'll be posting lots more information. Check out the Bus Bike Walk website, and we hope to see you at further Zeitgeist events and further active transportation events.
All right. Thanks, Gabby. Thanks, James.